Uh, we are in very unusual times that we are crossing, and it's important that we all share certain things and come together. Today's session consists of, first of all, making an assessment of what is really happening. I'm going to give a general talk about the broader frameworks, probably from more philosophical perspectives, and then go on to talk about what it means for us in education. What's the way forward? We will end with that. So let's say, to begin with, what does it mean for us as an individual and as a community? This whole dystopian scenario, this very surreal thing that has happened to us, where we've all been pushed back into our homes, into sort of self-confinements. It's straight out of a kind of a science fiction film where we've seen, people in hazmat suits, people just falling ill and dying. Pandemics have happened before. It's not the first time in human history. This is again a mutation of the virus, but it is much more ferocious, much more contagious. And as a result, I think we've been pushed back into our homes. It's somewhere as if the earth is simply saying, here is a line that I'm drawing. In the Ramayana, we talk about the Lakshman Rekha, the line that we don't dare cross. And this is really that. It's with all the kind of things that have happened to the environment. And that's what we're going to first discuss, is that as much as the scare of the coronavirus is very true and very real, the threat of the climate is also there, and that is something that we have not been addressing at all in the last few years. The earth has been giving us raps on our knuckle. We've had the Amazon fires, we've had bushfires in Australia, we have forests being chopped down, we have our oceans choking with, we've got continents of plastic in the ocean. All our flora and fauna and animals are really deeply affected. So climate threat actually is a huge threat to not only human civilization, but also to all our living organisms. So nevertheless, we have continued with human activity, with rising levels of pollutions. We already had surreal scenes where in big cities, children and people can't go out without a mask because the air is so polluted. So this dystopian scenario, why is it that we are here? What is it that we need to do? When such a huge disruption happens at such a huge scale, a disruption that can happen sometimes at an individual scale, which is a tragedy or a loss, it happens to each one of us in different ways. It actually serves the purpose to shake our beliefs, to reinvent ourselves. But when a huge crisis such as this happens, and this is happening at all levels, then again, this crisis is an opportunity for us to again reassess, to take stock of the situation. Where are we right now? So this time, at this point in time, it is time for us to change the paradigm. This is what the earth seems to be telling us. Enough. This is the last message I'm giving you. We've had the flu, let's not forget, we've had the Spanish influenza in 1918. We've had the Asian flu in 1957. We've had the different strains, H1N1, then H2N2, H2N3, whatever. But these kind of different pandemics have yet not made us reflect on what is it that we need to change. So let's take a look at what is this old paradigm and what is the new paradigm that we need to go towards. So let me first just give a meaning of the word paradigm. Paradigm here would mean a kind of a worldview. It would mean a set of theories, etc. So, it's a kind of a model or a pattern that we are following. Now, the old pattern or the old paradigm was actually one of the machine, or one that viewed the body as a machine, one that viewed the universe as a machine. That was a metaphor. That was the understanding, that everything could function with certain laws which are predictable. Again, that came from Newton's laws. It came from a Newtonian worldview. I'm sorry I'm talking in English, but मैं हिंदी में भी बाद में बात करूंगी, आज नहीं, लेकिन उसका मैं पूरा अनुवाद करके आप सबको भेजूंगी, ताकि जो भी जितने भी पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं जिनको इंग्लिश पूरी तरह से नहीं आती है, आप चिंता मत करिए, हिंदी और गुजराती में भी इसका अनुवाद करके आप तक साउंड ये रिकॉर्डिंग पहुंचेगा। लेकिन आज के लिए, क्योंकि हमारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स दुनिया भर से हैं, काफी अलग अलग जगहों से हैं, हम लोग आज इंग्लिश में बात करेंगे। So sorry, just to tell you that it will be translated later. So I'm talking about the paradigm, and this paradigm was a mechanistic one. It came from the idea that laws are governable, they're predictable. It came also from a mechanistic view of everything. Everything functions like clockwork. Let's also not forget that we also went through the Industrial Revolution. That was also the paradigm. Now, what did it mean, the Industrial Revolution? It just meant that everything we have to produce. Human beings are meant to keep making things. Productivity is important. Any time out, if you are lazing around, if you're not doing work, in economic terms, it's a disaster. So you should be busy all the time. It's like, you know, idle mind is a devil's workshop, that kind of an idea. Now that, remember, that has a huge impact in education, where we want children to be busy all the time. And that's why I'm going to make these connections between these paradigms and education. So productivity was important. So if productivity in the Industrial Revolution was important, performativity in education is important. That means parents want to see grades. How well is my child doing? Can I show, and can teachers and parents look at what the child is doing? Children want to also know how well they are doing, sometimes due to peer pressure as well. So utility, productivity, all of this we are seeing that. And this also led to economic models from the Industrial Revolution, from this worldview, which led us to an exploitation of resources. This meant that this was a fragmented view, where we felt that we are different. The earth, since it's a machine, it's not a living organism, therefore all its resources can be used to serve my purpose. And I'm different, I'm separate from the universe. And that view led us to a greater exploitation of resources, to look at flora and fauna and animals as practically non-living things. And that is what then led to the concentration of wealth in a few hands. It led to uniformization, it led to standardization in education as well. Curricula became standardized from more contextual curricula. So this uniformization, this led to competitiveness, this particular paradigm. Now, remember that this economic model is something that we've all been subjected to. We had passivity in terms of education, because the educational models were made to make the students passive. It came from the colonial era as well, because the colonization subjugated its populations into non-thinking and non-acting and almost non-being individuals. So this, of course, led to models which are very different. It led us to become so passive that even in terms of consumption, so if you're looking at economic models that pushed us to consuming more and more for the benefit of profit of few companies, a few multinational companies probably, then it has also led us to becoming just simply passive consumers. We're consuming information through the internet passively, without any critical thinking. We go to the market, we buy a package of biscuits. We don't know how much of packaging. We're not aware of how much of plastic do I have to throw, which is around this biscuit. And we're not aware of, when I eat this biscuit, what is really going into my body? Are there any nutrients in this at all? Or is it all just designed by gimmicks through fantastic marketing, through all of this, to just make me purchase it? So,
and also because the economy, the fundamentals of the economics are based on the fact that you need a growth. The GDP has to grow. If it doesn't grow, that means it is recession. That means you are going back. This is on the economical level. So we have to consume. And if we don't consume, we are not part of the. We are not doing our part for the growth of the society. This is what the fundamental principle of economics is, and this is in terms of human sciences also in the framework. Remember, of the end of the 19th century of the behaviorism, where we discovered that we can train people to do things, and this was what was considered as a learning, the conditioning. Actually, learning became synonymous to conditioning.
And this conditioning, I mean, to pick up from where, what you mentioned, remember, education has been all about conditioning as well. And society is also conditioning us. So what are the principal things we are conditioned through? It's obviously fear. Both fear and anxiety operate at both societal levels, at the level of home, the fear of losing one's job, not doing well enough. Will my child succeed in life? A lot of fears. And of course, at the heart of it, the fear of death. And I'll come to that later in terms of what should we be learning in school education. But just to remain the idea of conditioning, we have been conditioned to believe in scarcity, that the world doesn't have enough. There are not enough resources. There's not enough for all of us. So I have to survive by being competitive and by robbing other people, or by overcoming whatever issues are there. In fact, grabbing more and more. And this vibration of fear and anxiety, it's a vibration. And that is what's lowering the vibration of a lot of human beings. And that's how we go into depression, we go into isolation. The coronavirus has put us into a different kind of isolation. But people have been isolated before through depression, because they are not connected with themselves, because they don't know why they are here, what's their passion in life, what's going to be the contribution to society. There is no inner satisfaction. So I think this is very fundamental for us to now change this paradigm. The other thing about this paradigm is also that there's a lot of yes, mental health. Of course, I'll be talking about that. You're right. There is it's very linear and predictable laws. Yes, people do pressure. We're all pressurized. We're conditioned into believing we're doing the right thing as mothers, because we feel that if I don't put pressure on my child's not going to perform, and therefore I'll be left behind, I'll be blamed. But this paradigm has to change. That's not the truth at all, because the more pressure we put, the more stress we're putting on the child, and the more the stress, the lesser the immunity levels of the people. So if we have to move towards both mental and physical health, then we have to have situations that are stress-free. Let's not create artificial stress. There are going to be situations of stress, things which are not in our control. But let's not create environments that are going to create the stress artificially. So let me just come back to this to remain with my idea about this paradigm. So we need to shift from this old model, this old paradigm, to the new one. Another thing about the old paradigm is also about oh, okay, I couldn't read that, but I'll come back to the comments. Somebody's put in some comments about linear time and predictable laws. Now, when we are looking at a linear time of a cause and effect scenario, we forget that actually nature doesn't function in terms of linearity, it functions in terms of time cycles. All our festivals were related to time cycles. And when we celebrated the festivals, we were in sync, or all societies were in sync with the festivals, with the time cycles. Look at how we're celebrating our festivals today, with firecrackers, with chemical things during Holi, with kite festivals where we have strings that cut the wings of the birds. Is that a way to celebrate? That was not the idea. These festivals were marking time cycles and telling us that the cycle of life and death is a cycle. There is no linearity in it. So I'm not going to go into the theory of reincarnation, etc. That's for another time. But it's all a cycle. So now how do we go from that to the new paradigm? What's the new paradigm? So if the old paradigm was all about speed and productivity and doing more and consuming more, then this new paradigm will be or is about slowing down. If the old paradigm was about masses and any change can happen only with masses, then the new paradigm is about individuals, that individuals can bring about change. It's like throwing a little stone in the pond, and that little ripple effect that will happen, the ripples which will happen will change the status quo of all the organisms which are in that pond. Remember Gandhi? Gandhi did bring about change, but he first changed himself. And that is why his words carried so much of conviction. Otherwise, we can say a lot of wonderful things about being health conscious, about being conscious about the environment. These are words. It's rhetoric or oratory at the mouths of so many politicians that we hear. But when you really make a deep change within yourself, so it has to happen action and word. And behind the word and action is a thought. And when all these three levels are connected, then there is a conviction that comes from what we do and say, which is going to have an impact on society. And in that sense, an individual is the change. So we need to move from that lower vibration of fear and anxiety towards a higher vibration of compassion and love and trust. So this change is very important. The other point is also, of course, about equality of resources. These resources have been not equitably distributed. There's a difference between equality and equity. There was a nice little cartoon I had seen some time back, which I think Anita had shared it with us, which was, two children want to look at a football match, and there's a fence, and one is tall and one is short. And the tall boy can just about come to the fence and look through, and he can see the football match. But the little boy can't. So there's a little box, and he just climbs up to the box, and then he can see the football match. So when we talk about equity, we're saying that to the disadvantaged, to the marginalized, to the poor, or whoever doesn't have this, we're just going to give that little extra thing so that they both can actually then avail of the opportunity. So that I think in terms of resources, it's pretty important to know that. So now another thing about linearity and time cycles I was talking. How do we come out of this linearity? And I'll just give you one little example. It's something called synchronicity. And it was a word coined by Jung. And Jung said that when incidents happen, which are acausal, there's no cause and effect relationship. Then, you're speaking of something and you see something like that happen and it reflects that. And it's happening at the same time. I mean, many of us have gone through that. And he called this synchronicity, this acausal events happening. And that actually is something very important, because that is what helps us come out of this particular linearity of time and space. It will help, it is a tool for us to come out. So these are some simple tools. So if kids and parents can begin to be aware of synchronicities in their own lives, then patterns will begin to emerge, which are beyond the simple three-dimensional world that we are, the visible world that we're able to see. I hope that you're all being able to see. I can see some comments that you're not getting the video. I hope you're getting the video. Well, I assume that you are. Okay, so there are some hands up signs there. Okay. Now let's come back to education. And I know that we're all very concerned about that ultimately. So what's the way forward? One of the main things is about connection, about being connected, because the old paradigm took us into fragmented view of things. It cut the knowledge body into subjects. It separated self from the environment, and it separated us from our own bodies. I've often said that the body has been put into exile in the education system since centuries, and it is time that we brought the body back into the learning process. So what's the way forward? I think the first thing I would say, and after all of this is over, which I hope will be soon, but we don't know, would be to change the curriculum. This is very important, because just pause there. I mean, you're on pause, but just think about it. What in your school education is being useful to you right now? Between the algorithms that trigonometry that we learned, or I don't know, grammar, or whatever it is, that all these exams that we passed, how much of it has been useful to us right now, apart from the basic skills of reading and writing? So, I think the first thing is that curriculum has to be linked to the child's reality. If we have to prepare children for a world of tomorrow that we have not seen, and the world is changing from minute to minute now, then we can only prepare them by being engaged in the present. We cannot use a pedagogy of yesterday to prepare children for tomorrow. At MGIS, when we started with experiential learning, the idea was, what is experiential learning? Everything is an experience, good, bad, ugly. You can be having a very boring experience. I mean, I might be talking and you might be just feeling extremely bored, and that's an experience too. But of course, when we talk about experience, we're talking about a good experience, a meaningful experience, a pleasant experience. And John Dewey defined experiential learning as the interaction between self and the environment. Environment consisting of everything, not just the flora, fauna, its people, its resources, etc. But I'd go a step further today and saying it's not only an interaction with the environment, it's going to be an engagement with the environment. The environment is going to be our number one focus in the curriculum. It is very, very essential that we do that. And of course, I'm using the word environment in a very broad, general way. This can be deconstructed and we can understand its meanings later. So it's going to be important. What is it that we are learning? Who is it useful? Whose interests does it serve? Everything today, when we're looking at the world that we live in, let's face it, there's not much governance in the sense that it's multinational corporations that are governing us. They are the ones who are deciding policies because they are the ones who are funding elections all over the world. We know that has been said so many times. So we are actually just ants in the larger system, and we're just serving some other interests. And I don't think we want to do that anymore. I don't think we want a world where our children are going to be serving such other purposes. So it's very important to ask whose interest does it serve? And to me, the education must serve the interests of the child first. And therefore, no matter how much the adults want to teach children certain things, boards are going to decide certain things, governments are going to decide certain things. But I as an educator, and I as a parent, or us as a community of parents, we can agree on certain things that children need to know. And in today's world, I think the first thing I would say is really resilience. Who or what did we learn in our school education that helped us prepare to face the storms of life? Nothing. Believe me, we never touched upon that. We never touched upon human emotions. We still don't. And I don't think even at MGIs we do it enough. I think we need to do so much more because we're under pressure from other boards. We are, you have to finish certain things, expectations, etc. But I think that's fundamental because the core of who you are, what you feel, is very important to be addressed in education. So we need to give tools to children to become resilient, to face the storms of life that they happen, to equip them also with the kind of skills that they need. Now, what are the kind of skills they're going to be needing in the future? We don't know. We haven't seen the future. But what are the skills that we need today? Let's at least prepare them for that. We're talking about this virus attack. Remember 2000, there was a virus, supposedly, it did happen, a virus attack for computers. So today we are just confined to our homes. But remember, look at that. Our technology is functioning. We're able to connect virtually, etc. Imagine if there's a virus attack also on our computer systems, and that's it, everything goes. And it can happen. Then are we equipped? Will our kids be equipped to face a world that suddenly changes, a sudden crisis occurs? Do they know what to do? Are they able to adapt themselves? Are they able to innovate? Are they able to keep their core essence of who they are strong enough and think and work with others to move forward?
And also, you have to really realize that definitely this coronavirus is something serious. I'm not undermining that. But yet we can face it. We just lock down, we stay home, and we are protected. But think about the real issue, the other issue which are there. You know that the bees can disappear. The bees are disappearing. If the bees disappear, that means 70% of the food that we are eating on this planet will not be there for us. And if already people are dying of hunger today, imagine you remove 70% of food, what will happen? And this is not a crisis where you can just stay at home, if it's happened. Water scarcity, climate change, the rise of the ocean. Imagine that if the temperature increased by 2 or 3 degrees, the rise of the sea will be such that half of Bombay will disappear. Dhaka will disappear. Cities will disappear in the world. And the people who are there, they have no place to go. So these are, the challenges which are in front of us today is just something which is just informing us that we have gone too far. The human being have gone too far. And okay, you have that. Now think about that and change what you are doing. This is the kind of message that we are receiving. And if we don't understand this message, then things which may happen later on are much more serious. even. So, which is why what I am thinking about the today's situation is that it is an opportunity for all of us to rethink what we have to do in our life, and especially in education, because we have a responsibility which is even maybe more than the other, because we are not reacting as for today. We have to act for tomorrow and for day after tomorrow, because the children will be facing today. We can see how difficult it is. So imagine after 20 years, if you don't change our practice toward the planet and all that, what will happen to them? How they will react to that? So we have to really today equip the education system so that the children of tomorrow, they will be able to face the situation, to find solution. And by the way, it's not even to find solution to the problem, just the problem, we are creating the problem. So we just have to stop creating the problem, and the solution, we don't have to look for solution. Solution will be automatic if you don't create the problem.
So also, when you're talking about the old paradigm and the new one, things about, like, let's say in education, what does it mean? From competitive models, we go to cooperative models and collaborative models, because each of us has a very different skill and a very different contribution to it. I mean, I remember one child who was very, very good in music, and then the parents thought it was much better that the child go into engineering because music's okay as a hobby, but this child's passion and his calling was music. So, this did lead to a lot of, I could see the terrific change in the child in a negative way. And that's why I think it's so important that we allow our children to also find their life purpose. What's the purpose in their life? Why are they here? And each of us has a very unique contribution to make. Let's just not try to put our unfulfilled dreams, expectations, results of conditioning on the child. So for that, we need to shift out of this old model of education. Also, a few years back when we started the school, 20 years back, okay, so I'm reading some of the comments. When we started our school, we called it Generative Resources Learning, the pedagogy. Now, that was a very intuitive name we gave to it. People still ask me, what's the meaning of this term that you use, the name of your pedagogy, which is Generative Resources Learning. And today, when I look back, I think it was an important thing to label it like that, because we're generating the resources. We're not just using them from the earth. We're just not exploiting the resources. We're generating them. These are resources, and we're learning through them. And when we talk about resources, they're both external resources and they're internal resources. And education has focused a lot on whatever is visible, or and also it has focused a lot on the analytical part of the brain, on the rational part, but it hasn't given enough scope for emotions, for intuitions, for feelings, whatever is the other side, the imaginative part, the creative aspect of human beings. So all these interior resources that we have also can be exploited to actually, and we need to give value to that. We know in India how often it happens that kids who are very good in playing, let's say, a sport, it could be tennis or cricket or whatever. By the time they come into grade 9 or 10 or 11, the parents say, all right, enough, study. This is okay. But this kid's passion is that sport, and that sport is so important. And we must give value to that, because everybody can't play cricket or tennis or whatever it is. Everybody can't play music the way this child does. And what this child has to contribute in that domain is very important. So, we think we are sometimes guiding our children with the best of interests, but that's not really happening. I think the only person who can really know what they really want to do is the child. And there is a way to know that. And that's what we're going to be doing. We should be focusing on in school education. How do I know that I know? And those are the resources we need to tap into. So we need to create a healthier society. 20 years back when we started the school, I had an idea in my mind. I used to think, why do kids why do kids fall sick before going to school? They have stomach aches and headaches and fevers, and everything is so psychosomatic because they hate going to school. So I thought, well, if schools could create ill health, then schools could create better health if learning became fun and enjoyable and meaningful and purposeful. And that was the idea set up with, that we could create better health. So that's something I'm still very, very close to, this idea that our schools must create better health. mental and physical. And they both are interrelated. I mean, if you are creating a stressful thing for the child mentally, then the body is going to follow it. That's all the current research in epigenetics, if you want to read Bruce Lipton, will lead to that. Now, finally, heading towards our conclusion would be, what do we need to do now? One of the simple things, I was listening to Vandana Shiva, who is the founder of Navdanya movement up north, and she's been fighting to retain the purity of the seed and to keep the seed with the farmers, seeds which are patented and taken away by Monsanto and such other big companies. And I thought it was very interesting that you said, just go back to gardening. And I think that's true. I mean, we have been doing it MGS a lot, but I think it needs to become inherently a daily activity for all children. Because, you can watch as many videos as you want of watering plants and looking at a plant grow on an iPad or on your smartphone. But to actually grow a seed from a seed to a plant, that miracle of life, that cycle of life, that is so important for children. That is being connected. So I think we're going to come back to a time where we will give value to our hands. Look at all of us. We're all at homes and we're all doing things by our hands and we're using less and we're becoming more conscious and more self-aware. So what our education needs to do is to help us become more self-aware. This interaction or engagement with the environment can happen when I become more aware of myself, and then I can engage with the environment. And in this, and understand that it is interconnected. This virus situation, if it doesn't teach us that we're interconnected, I don't know what else is going to teach us that. It's just a rap on the knuckles again, saying, wait, don't think you're separate. Don't think you're above everything. So I think that's the thing, to return to the earth, to do things with our hands, to come back to models which are more local from the global. There is going to be a movement. It is already happening in so many places in the world. We're going more local. And from learning to do and to do and to do, and then to become sick doing that and to become stressful, let's also start learning how to be, and to be our authentic self, to be who we truly are. That is just so important. And if we can find that space and to become our authentic selves, then I think we'll be creating that resilience in children. If we can accept ourselves totally and unconditionally and accept each other without judgment, I think we need to create those spaces. So I'm hoping that when we come back to the school, and of course we're going to continue our talks, etc., we will have the courage to change the curriculum to something which is drastically different, more in sync with the needs of the children. Really, we need to do that. And whatever learning, whatever concepts are mapped in that will be mapped. But we're not going to follow, which is something we've been doing for 20 years, but we need to do it even with more conscious levels. And Pascal often talks about a mutation, and we need to mutate. We need to mutate in terms of our consciousness. We need to move ourselves to a higher vibration. And I think, and I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to do that. In the coming week, we will be having more meetings in smaller groups. It will be more interactive. This was just one of the first sessions. We thought it was important for us to connect with you all. I'm very happy in this way of connecting, because I used to feel very guilty about the carbon footprint when everybody has to come and just listen to something which is just a speech or a talk or whatever. But from the next meetings onwards, we're going to do it in smaller groups, which is going to be much more interactive. We can all talk. It's not going to be this one-way thing. But I do hope that you all are safe. I pray for your health, and together I think we'll emerge from this stronger. And I really hope that we all can, and I know we will co-create a much better world. A world where we will all be healthy, where there'll be justice, which is more equitable, where we can share all the resources and find the time for all our loved ones, which is what we're doing right now. Well, let's not be pushed back let's not be forced to do it. Let's just do that consciously when we come back together. So see you now very soon this week. I hope this session, such as it was in these conditions, was useful. Thank you very much for all your support, as of always, all the parents, all the children, some of our wonderful alumni who are there, and some of our wonderful friends who've joined us from France, Moscow, etc. Thank you very much. Namaste.